The book of Revelation is a prophetic book. I see the book as mostly futuristic from our point of view, in that it portrays the last few years before the second coming of Christ and then on into eternity. Here's a very quick overview. The book starts off with Christ revealing himself to the Apostle John. Christ gives John messages to 7 churches in Asia Minor. Then John is transported to the throne room in heaven, where Christ receives a scroll with 7 seals. Christ breaks the 7 seals, and events on earth follow each opened seal. 7 trumpets are blown by angels, causing other events on earth. 7 bowls filled with God's wrath are poured out by angels, all of which trigger further events on earth. These 3 sets of 7s are interspersed with other scenes and themes concerning the end time. Then we see Christ's second coming, his millennial reign, and a glimpse of eternity. The question I will be dealing with is, will all the contents of the book be strictly chronological in their fulfillment? I am thinking especially of the last things to happen before Christ returns. The following are a few points that we must consider. In chapter 11, verse 7, we read of the beast that comes up. In chapter 13, verse 1, we read of a beast coming up. Is this talking about 2 different beasts coming up at 2 different times, or of the same beast coming up at one point in time? Chapter 14, verse 8 says, "Fallen is Babylon the Great." Chapter 18, verse 2 says, "Fallen is Babylon the Great." Do these utterances concern 2 different entities, or do they concern the same entity? Chapter 14, verse 20 says, "The winepress was trodden outside the city." Chapter 19, verse 15 says, "He treads the winepress of the fierce wrath of God." Are these verses describing 2 different events, or the same event? In chapter 11, we read of the ministry of 2 prophets. Verse 3 says, "They will prophesy for 1260 days." In chapter 12, we meet a group of people described in the form of a woman. We read, "She had a place prepared by God so that there she would be nourished for 1260 days. In chapter 13, we are told about a beast. We read, "Authority to act for 42 months was given to him." The question is, are these 3 chapters chronological, in that they are talking of 3 consecutive periods of 3.5 years, totaling 10.5 years? Or are they talking of the same? From what we have looked at, it seems that prophetic events portrayed in the book of Revelation do not appear to be strictly chronological in their fulfillment. Some prophecies seem to be repeated, and time periods seem to overlap. Now, do we have any further evidence to support the premise of overlapping prophecies in the book of Revelation? Let's consider the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, and the 7 vials. Will these 3 sets of 7 be 21 events lined up in a row, in that the earthly effects of the 7 seals are followed by the earthly effects of the 7 trumpets, which in turn are followed by the earthly effects of the 7 vials? As we consider this, look with me at the following. In chapter 6, as part of the sixth seal, we read, "Every mountain and island were moved out of their places." In chapter 16, as a part of the seventh vial, we read, "Every island fled away, and the mountains were not found." Is this a description of two identical events that take place at different times, or does it portray the same event? Again, in chapter 6, at the sixth seal, we read, "The great day of his wrath is come." And again, in chapter 16, at the seventh vial, we read of the great day of God, the Almighty. Are there two great days of God, or one? Yet again, in chapter 6, at the sixth seal, it says, "His wrath is come." At the sounding of the seventh trumpet, we read, "Thy wrath is come." Does God's wrath come twice, or do these two accounts point to the same thing? At the sounding of the sixth trumpet, we read of the great river Euphrates, where a world war erupts. At the outpouring of the sixth vial, we read of the great river Euphrates, where armies pass going to war. Do these references tell us about two different wars that involve the Euphrates River, or are they referring to the same war? Look with me at what happens at the seventh seal, the seventh trumpet, and the seventh vial. At the seventh seal, we read, "There followed peals of thunder, and sounds, and flashes of lightning, and an earthquake." At the seventh trumpet, we read, "There were flashes of lightning, and sounds, and peals of thunder, and an earthquake." At the seventh vial, we read, "There were flashes of lightning, and sounds, and peals of thunder, and there was a great earthquake." We see that the seals, the trumpets, and the vials all end with flashes of lightning, sounds, peals of thunder, and an earthquake. What is most likely? That these things happen 3 times in a row, or could they be referring to the same event? If the same event is being referred to 3 times, this would mean that the last seal, the last trumpet, and the last vial all end at the same point in time. Now, is there anything else in the book of Revelation that can support this thesis? Let's see what happens when Christ breaks the 6th seal. We are told, "He broke the 6th seal, and there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth made of hair, and the whole moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky fell to the earth." Then we read of people hiding themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains, and they said to the mountains and to the rocks, "Fall on us, and hide us from the presence of him who sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb." Here we have cosmic signs. The sun and moon are darkened, and the stars fall in conjunction with the presence of God and Christ. Compare this to what Christ said when he spoke about the end time. He said, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the sky." The next verse says, "They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory." Christ said that specific cosmic signs will happen immediately after the Great Tribulation, when he comes back. Since the 6th seal portrays the exact same cosmic signs, it seems therefore that the seals end with Christ coming back. When the 7th trumpet is blown, it is said, "The kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ." This happens when Christ returns. One of many scriptures that talk of this is in Paul's letter to Timothy, where he wrote of the presence of God and of Christ, who is to judge the living and the dead, and by his appearing and his kingdom. It seems, therefore, that the trumpets end with Christ coming back. After the sixth vial has been poured out, Christ says, "Behold, I am coming like a thief. Blessed is the one who stays awake." This tells us that at this juncture in the book of Revelation, Christ still hasn't come as a thief. It seems, therefore, that the vials end with Christ coming back. We have now seen that Jesus comes back after the sixth seal is opened, at the seventh trumpet, and after the sixth vial. All evidence suggests that the seals end with Christ coming back, the trumpets end with Christ coming back, and the vials also end with Christ coming back. The question is, will Christ come back 3 times, or will he come back once, in that the same event is referred to 3 times? Since it is apparent that Christ will come back once more, not thrice more, this means the 3 sets of 7 will not unfold as 21 events in a row. The effects of the 7 seals appear to be a basic overview of the end time, right up to the second coming of Christ. They seem to span a number of years. The effects of the 7 trumpets give even more detail concerning the end time right up to the second coming of Christ. They span many months, since according to chapter 9 verse 5, the 5th trumpet alone lasts 5 months. The effects of the 7 vials portray even more detail of the end time right up to the second coming of Christ. They seem to be poured out in quick succession right at the very end, and may only span a few weeks. From the information we have looked at, we can attempt to make a simplified outline of the relationship between the seals, trumpets, and vials. As you can see, the 6th trumpet coincides with the 6th vial, and the 6th and 7th seals coincide with the 7th trumpet and the 7th vial. I think we can safely conclude that the prophecies found within the book of Revelation concerning the end time leading up to the second coming of Christ will not be strictly chronological in their fulfillment.